a big thank you for joining us this evening. We're delighted to give you an introduction into Explore and what we see as the big travel trends for 2022. Now, before I pass over to Anthony and Carmel, two of our wonderful product managers at Explore, I wanted to give you a brief overview of our brand and kind of what we do. Some of you will know Explore, of course, and for some of you it'll be very new. So at Explore, we've got over 500 trips to about 120 countries. We've got walking trips, we've got cycling trips, we've got discovery and wildlife trips, and our average group size is just 12. And we do things a little bit differently at Explore. You know, we travel by small group. We're led by local guides, and we get our customers closer to the place, the culture, and to the people in ways that they've never imagined. Our guides are so important to traveling with Explore. These guys are chosen for their great knowledge of their country and have a huge passion to making our customers' trips really, really extraordinary. They're all local guides, all trained by Explore, of course, and really give our customers hassle-free travel and really get them under the skin of the destination, really give our customers authentic travel experiences. As I said, our group sizes are just 12, a maximum group size of 18, average size of 12. And so the groups are big enough to really help customers and meet like-minded people, but really get to the heart, but small enough, I should say, to really get to the heart of the destination that they've traveled to. We really care deeply about both the people and the places that we visit. This is not a new thing for Explore at all. Sustainable travel is a big part of the traveling ethos with Explore, and we're very proud to recently launch a new partnership with Rewilding Britain, and only just at the very start of last year become carbon neutral travel, where we offset all the carbon associated with both the flights and the land component of our trips. And certainly goes far beyond the partnerships that we've got, the great partnerships that we've got, and you can see those on the screen now. Our brochure collection, we've got three different titles on, three different brochure titles. We've got our combination brochure, which features our discovery trips, our wildlife trips, our walking, cycling, our self-guided trips, and even some private tours as well. We've got a full brochure dedicated to our family adventures, where we carry families together. We carry children as young as 7 across multi-active trips, walking, canoeing, kayaking, some wonderful family adventures, and that's all wrapped up in our family adventure brochure. And then hot off the press is our polar brochure, and that's just starting to land at the moment, and we've got trips to the Arctic and Antarctic as well. I would encourage anyone who's joined us this evening to go onto our website. You can order one of our brochures and we'll get that mailed out to you, or you can help save the planet and you can view that online. But all of our brochures are there for you to view. We have some wonderful experiences. So we have, as I mentioned, our discovery program, where it's largely cultural focused and wildlife focused trips. We've got cycling adventures, where we take customers across all corners of the globe on cycling adventures, typically only 4 to 6 hours cycling each day, and we provide all of the bikes, and it's a fantastic way to explore any new destination on 2 wheels. Then of course we've got walking and trekking trips. We've got anywhere from kind of walking across the Amalfi Coast for 8 days to doing all the big iconic treks in the world, the Kilimanjaros, the walking, the Inca Trail. And then, like I said, we've got family adventures as well. Our customers are largely 50 plus. Most of the majority of customers traveling with us are female. It's about a 60-40 split. And we're really, really proud of our repeat customer rate. It's very, very high. And I think that really speaks to the quality of the trips that we have. And we're very, very delighted to again be a Which recommended provider for 2021. The experiences I talked about, covering our discovery and wildlife trips, our walking, cycling adventures, our family holidays as well. Our customers, 50 plus, majority of those is female, and we have a large amount of solo travelers traveling with us as well, and which recommended again for 2021. So 2022 is going to be a big year for big holidays. We're all making up for lost time and those missed adventures, of course. I'm now going to pass over to Anthony and Carmel to introduce you to to a few themes. Those, of course, being the great outdoors. Nothing gets you closer to a country than walking or cycling through it. A new London rail tours that we have on offer, and some brand new tours as well that we have. So, Anthony, over to you to give a lovely explore overview of the trips that we have.
Fantastic, excellent. Thanks very much, Ben. And if you can just go on to the next slide, please, that would be fantastic. Yeah, we've all been through a really tough and difficult time over the last 2 years. The world really has been turned on its head, and there are times when we're all in isolation in our own homes. It was really hard. But one of the things which sort of a glimmer of light that I found certainly last year from my own experience was going out and exploring some of my own countryside. I mean, I live in Hampshire, close to Winchester, and actually going out and just walking on some of the footpaths and exploring some of the country lanes around where I live. And it was absolutely fantastic. I explored so many places which were literally, they're on my doorstep. I just didn't know they existed. One of the, as we came into 2021, one of the things that I said to myself was to really make a big effort to actually go out, and wherever I am, whether I'm at home or whether I'm going abroad or whether I'm even just visiting friends in a neighbouring county, that I would actually go and make an effort to go out and explore, where I am in more detail on foot. And I think that this has really been the catalyst between, and I think lots of people I speak to have found the same thing. And if you talk about and you look at the trends that we think as we're going to go into 2022 and beyond, I think actually taking your time to explore your local area by foot or by bike is going to become ever more popular. So what I want to do today is just to introduce you to our cycling and walking range of holidays. And Ben, if you can go on to the next slide, please. And I think one of the great benefits of whether you're on foot or whether you're on bike is actually getting away from the crowds. And what I've got a picture here, we've got obviously Great Wall of China and the Taj Mahal, both fantastic sites in their own right. But contrast that with the pictures on the right there. Walking, cycling, it's a great way to get off the beaten track. Sure, of course, we're all we want to go and see the main sites along the way. That's very much part of the experience which we offer. And you're not going to go to northern India and not see the Taj Mahal, but actually getting off the beaten track, seeing some of the areas which you'd normally drive past, I think, and actually just taking the holiday a little bit slower is something which I think will pay handsome dividends and really enable people to feel that they've really experienced the country that they're traveling to. So Ben, if you can just go onto the next slide, please. So I'm going to start off by talking about our cycling holidays in a little bit more detail. So nuts and bolts, first of all. Well, we offer two ways of exploring on our cycling trips. The first is a group experience, and that will be traveling with a maximum group size of 16, as Ben alluded to earlier. The other way is to go on a self-guided basis, and this is where you don't have an Explore tour leader, but you can very much explore at your own pace. So you get a comprehensive set of trip notes, and all the hotel reservations are taken care of. Your luggage is transferred from place to place, and then you can just explore in your own pace. So there's two types of ways of exploring on our cycling holidays. And in terms of the bikes, well, we offer, so one thing that they're not is very high spec road bikes. So they're either hybrid bikes, which is a mixture between a road bike and a mountain bike. So they tend to have slightly thicker wheels, so they've got better grip, they're easier to handle. Or alternatively, we also offer e-bike options, and e-bikes are basically, they've got an electronic motor that really help give you an extra boost. If you're looking to go uphill and it's pretty steep, it just it kicks in, and it doesn't do all the work for you, but it certainly takes a lot of the strain out of those long uphill sections. So we offer two different types of bikes, and of course, what we provide is a whole infrastructure behind that. So it's all the hotel bookings along the way, great food experiences, sightseeing experiences as well. We take all the hassle away from that, so you can just enjoy the destination, enjoy taking it at your own pace, and experiencing a new culture and a new place. Of course, for all of our group trips, you also get an Explore tour leader. We're incredibly proud of our tour leaders. You know, Explore have been going for 40 years now, and we've got some of the best tour leaders on the road. They're so passionate about their destination, and they really do help to bring it to life. So Ben, if you can go on to the next slide, please. Let's have a look at a typical day of what a day might entail on a cycling trip. Well, the first thing which I would say is this isn't a race. Our groups are made up of normal people, you know, like you and I. So there's no lycra-clad speed merchants here. It's not. We're not. You know, there's no race to the finish. You know, we want people to enjoy each other's company and to really enjoy the destination as well. Now, sometimes people will go off and ride out on their own. Other times, people will ride together as a group. One thing that we all do is we always have a rear marker, so you're never going to get left behind. And we're also going to have a support vehicle as well. And we'll have pre-designated stops along the way so that the group will reform. So if some people go out in front, other people are maybe taking it a bit more relaxed. We'll have various stages where we all regroup, have a rest, enjoy maybe a pastry or a cup of coffee or something before we carry on. Now, I've mentioned that we also offer these trips as for self-guided. On those, of course, you don't have a tour leader, but you do have comprehensive route maps along the way. So, you can download a GPS tracker so that, and we'll provide all of this information when you if you book, and so you can't get lost. It's every step is explained in detail. In terms of the grades of trips, so we offer everything from easy, moderate, right through to challenging tours. Just to put some numbers on that. So an easy trip will typically be between 2 and 4 hours per day in the saddle. Lots of stops along the way, and very much a leisurely ride. Typically, these will be fairly flat terrains. Moderate, we'll be looking at around 4 to 5 hours per day, and on our challenging trips, there's going to be hillier terrain, 6 hours in the saddle, and they're going to be the more challenging options that we have. In terms of what you need to bring, well, all you need to bring a cycling helmet, a day bag, but you don't need to bring lots of kit with you. That's all provided. The bike itself, of course, all of that is provided by us. Ben, next slide, please. So I just want to showcase a couple of trips here. So starting off in the Baltic states. So this particular tour covers 3 of the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And I chose this particular option because, first of all, we think that Europe's going to be a really popular option for people next year. Lots of low-cost flight options. I've just come back actually myself from mainland Europe, and although the COVID protocols, there is some, I'm not going to say there's nothing to do, there's a bit of form filling. It's an awful lot easier, certainly from my experience, than some of our longer haul destinations at the moment. So from a sort of COVID protocol point of view, Europe is very much opening up for travel. And this particular trip to the Baltic states, we start off in Vilnius, lots of beautiful historic buildings. It's got quite a Scandinavian feel. In fact, throughout the Baltic states, it very much feels, it's got the Scandinavian feel. Lots of street art, lots of the cafe culture is really, really popular there. It's quite a sort of hip destination these days. We go to some amazingly preserved medieval castles. Trapani here, which is the picture on the bottom right, that's it's an hour and a half, so it's half hour out of Vilnius. It's this amazingly well preserved medieval castle. It's in the middle of a lake, really, really stunning. And this trip, which we do over 9 days, lots of modes of transport. So we visit some of the islands. We get ferries over to some of the islands just off the coast. Lots of beautiful coastal stretches, and of course the 3 great cities as well of Vilnius, Riga, and Tallinn. So a really good introduction to the Baltic states. And what I would point out here is that in terms of the cycling, the longest day here is 41 kilometers. So in old money, that's 25 miles, and we're not cycling the whole route. So on most days we'll drive to a destination, maybe a couple of hours drive, and then we'll get the bikes out, and then we'll be exploring our stop in more detail on the bikes. So you don't worry, you're not cycling the whole way. Next slide, please, Ben. So just to give you a different flavor here, so our long haul trip, one of our most popular destinations, certainly pre-pandemic, was Vietnam. And on this trip here, it's our Saigon to Hanoi trip. It's a great classic 14 days, starting in Saigon, going all the way up to the north to Hanoi, and some great experiences here again. So there are some longer traveling days. This is rated a moderate trip, but what we try and do on our trips is to really vary. There's a rail journey here, an overnight rail journey. Carmel will be talking more about those in a bit. We spend a night on an overnight junk boat in Halong Bay with the limestone pinnacles all around. We go to Hanoi, we go to Saigon, we go to Hoi An, which is a stunning city in the Central Highlands, really well preserved. We've got a cookery lesson there. So we really sort of immerse ourselves in the culture. So I guess the point that I'm making on these is it's not all about the cycling. Of course, cycling is a big part of what we do, but there's an awful lot more we like to experience along the way as well. And just to put some numbers on this, so this trip, 430 kilometers over 8 days, 90% of that is on tarmac roads, but the roads that we select are all country roads. So we design our itineraries so we're not traveling on main roads. We're trying to get off the beaten track wherever possible. Only 10% of the cycling is actually on sort of gravel or earth roads. So next slide, please, Ben. So let's just have a look at our walking holidays. So we've got 90 small group trips, so 45 countries. Similar to cycling, we like to keep our groups small, so maximum group size of 16 people. And in a similar way to our cycling trips, the majority of those are in the easy to moderate end of the spectrum. Now, of course, we offer some of the iconic treks here. So we offer the Inca Trail in Peru, we offer Kilimanjaro, so that's going to be at the tougher end of the spectrum. But we also offer a lot more European-based trips where the walking is a good deal easier. So on these, we craft our trips to incorporate some of the local highlights. So we're staying in an agriturismo, and we're really getting under the skin to explore the destination in much more detail. So next slide, please, Ben. So a typical day on a walking trip, well, again, we offer them on a basis of either you're going to explore tour leader, or you're on a self-guided basis where you're following your own trip notes, and lots of stops along the way. So in a similar way to our cycling trips, what we tend to do is that groups do tend to spread out a bit. Some people like to walk faster, others like to take their time, take more photographs, just to have a leisurely pace. So we'll have pre-agreed stops where everyone gets to catch up. Lots of opportunity to take photos, and Also, lots of opportunities to eat and drink, and you know, it's not a race. On all of our walking trips, your luggage gets transported from place to place. So all you need to take with you is a rucksack with just you know, a camera, hat, sunscreen. So really allowing you to you know, to enjoy your walk and not be burdened or worried about you know, having to carry your luggage along the way. So I've got a couple of trips here just to illustrate the types of holidays that we do. So I've included this walking in Rajasthan trip because I think this is a great example of where, yeah, sure, we're walking on here as well, but we also go to some of the, you know, the great highlights. So, you know, we've got a picture on the top left there this is the Red Fort, which is just outside of Agra. Of course, we go to the Taj Mahal. So we go to the main sites, but we've also incorporated lots of walking experiences along the way. And again, we mix up the transport, so we're traveling by rail. We've also got a camel ride around Pushkar as well. So we're really mixing, giving you the best possible experience in India that we can. And Ben, if you can go on to the next slide, please. And another example which I'd like to share with you is our Amalfi Coast trip. So this is one of our most popular trips in Europe. This is staying in an agriturismo. On this trip, I tell you, you won't go hungry on this trip. The owners are real feeders. So you're going to experience some absolutely spectacular food and some great walking as well. So we do 5 of the classic treks along the Amalfi Coast, including the Walk of the Gods. But what we've also done is we've designed some walks slightly inland. One of the challenges with the Amalfi Coast, because of its popularity, is that it is very, very busy on a lot of the sections. So by actually designing routes which are slightly inland, we managed to get away from the crowds, still got the spectacular scenery, but without the hordes of people. And I guess that's one thing that we can really bring is in terms of our planning of trips, because we've been operating in these destinations for 40 years now. You know, we've got the insider's knowledge in terms of where best to go. So Ben, next slide. Just one thing before I hand over to Carmel. I also want to mention that we also offer multi-activity holidays. So if you don't want a week of just walking or just cycling, you want to vary it up a bit, then these are increasingly popular. We've got a choice of winter or summer destinations, you know, of course, you get to go walking and you get to go cycling, but also we've incorporated things like river kayaking or whitewater rafting, or in winter, there's snowshoeing and lots of other activities as well. So these multi-activity holidays are increasingly popular for those that are looking to try something new and have a slightly different experience. So I'm conscious of time here. So I think what we're going to do now is we're just going to flip over the next 2 slides, if you wouldn't mind, Ben. There is going to be the opportunity for questions at the end. I will come on to this if anyone wants to ask about what to pack or how to prepare. Very happy to answer those at the end. But I think what we'll do now is if we can just go over to the next section, and I'm going to hand over to Carmel.
Thanks, Anthony. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. I actually did our self-guided Amalfi Coast trip and it was fantastic. One of my favourite tours. The food was brilliant. But I'm talking to you about a range of new trips. So I'm mainly going to cover new tours this evening. And the first lot of new tours I wanted to talk to you about are rail journeys, which we have set up from London. So Ben, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we really wanted to aim to slow travel right down and put a bit of romance back into your trip, really. We don't just want to drop into places when you fly in, you're just dropping right into the airport. Traveling by train allows you to see the destinations change as you move through a country. So we've got a set of new trips that all are traveling entirely by rail from London, St Pancras, all beginning with the Eurostar, rail out to the final destination and a flight back. And the final destination will be a range of places throughout Europe. All of them still have the explore sort of setup of having the tour leader all the way through, maximum group sizes of 16 or 18 depending on the trip, and like-minded people really who just want to explore but in a different way. And we wanted to sort of get back to slow travel, which is, I think, what people need right now. So yeah, Ben, if you could move on to the next slide, please. So where can we go? We have 7 trips, and to go route by route, so the top one, the blue line there, is a 9-day trip ending in Kiev. And it's a real journey through Eastern Europe. You get the Eurostar straight away from London to Berlin. So that will be your first day. And so in Berlin, obviously you have the Berlin Wall, Checkpoint Charlie, all the East and West, and you're arriving at basically the gateway to Eastern Europe, traveling through Poland. We include a visit to Auschwitz. We include actually a trip to the Jewish quarter in Krakow and a local meal there, which involves klezmer music, typical Jewish music, and Jewish food, and getting a bit off the beaten track as well with a small town in Poland called Poznan, which has some sort of very bonkers traditions, like these fighting goats that come out every midday of their town hall, mechanical goats, I should say, not real goats. And we do some cheese making in Lviv before ending in Kiev, and with the option to extend to Chernobyl and spend 2 nights there in the exclusion zone in Chernobyl, which has been incredibly popular for us as a destination over the last few years. I'll skip over the red line. I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail, which is our London to Istanbul trip. The yellow line there, London to Athens, that I think is probably my favourite one of these tours. It covers the classical cities in Italy. It travels through the spine of Italy. You go to Pisa, Rome, going into Puglia, where you'll have a full rural food day, visiting olive oil mill, having a local farmer's lunch, going to a bakery where they make DOP, the sort of protected bread that you can only make in this particular region in Puglia, and then get an overnight ferry and wake up in Greece. So you wake up to Kefalonia and Ithaca Islands before heading into rural Greece for a night, and traveling on to Athens. It's just a couple of hours really from the landing point to Athens. So that's a fantastic trip. And moving left of your screen, you've got a London to the south of Spain, London to Malaga, which goes through the western side of France and Spain. There are rail journeys out there that you can do, sort of group trips as well, that go from London to Spain, but most of them go through Nice and Barcelona. And I think that the west side has so much, almost more to offer. So Bordeaux, we do wine tasting there. In San Sebastian, they have traditional Basque country tapas, and you can walk for a day on the Camino de Santiago as well, which we do with our tour leader, before going through central Spain and ending in Malaga. And the final one that to mention on this slide is the green line, carrying on from Malaga south to Marrakesh. So you can travel with us from London all the way to Marrakesh. Now that's the big one. So you really see Europe change there, from the kind of old Baroque, faded glamour sort of places of Bordeaux and San Sebastian with beautiful architecture, through to Andalusia, which is all Moorish, and you really see that then change into Africa when you take the ferry over to Morocco and onwards to Marrakesh on the train. So they're the general routes, and I really just wanted to pick out one, if we can move on to the next slide, which is our London to Istanbul. And it really encapsulates kind of what I wanted to do with these trips. I didn't just want to go from city to city, which you can easily do. You could get to Istanbul actually within about 4 days if you really wanted to. But we're following the route of the classic Simplon Orient Express through sort of Central Europe to the gateway of Asia, Istanbul. But we're also getting a bit off the beaten track. So we go to the next slide, Ben. So we're covering the 4 really classic Orient Express cities, bookending the trip with Venice and Istanbul, and covering Zagreb and Belgrade in the middle as well. So they're incredible European cities, and you'll travel them with your tour leader or local guides as well. That can add even more to your experience and your understanding of those places. But we wanted to sort of also take you through some of the more interesting bits of Central Europe, as well as the cities. So if we go on to the next slide, here are just 3 of the places that are kind of a bit more off the beaten track that you will travel through on this trip. So we actually doing some wine tasting in Serbia at a wine producing region called Aleksandrovac. We'll go to vineyard and taste Serbian wine. I mean, how many of us can say we've had Serbian wine? And in Croatia, traveling east through the country from Zagreb, near the border with Serbia, is one of Europe's largest wetland areas, and it's a really important place. It has a really important place, should I say, for Europe's biodiversity. It's a protected region. They're called the Karpatski-Rit Wetlands, and we can do a boat trip there with a local guide who will take us on some bird spotting predominantly, although there are larger mammals there, like you can see the red fox here that I've put in the presentation. There's deer in the wetland as well, beaver, otter, and a whole host of birds as well, including nesting eagles. So it's a really important place that not a lot of travellers actually go to. And the final picture in the bottom right of your screen there is an interesting place that's in the south of Serbia, sort of on the border with Bosnia, near the border with Bosnia. And it's called Mokra Gora. It's an ethno village, is what it terms itself as. And it was actually created in the 1970s by a film director who was Bosnian, and he wanted to create a village that replicated his youth, and he said it was all lost. All these typical traditional villages were lost in the Bosnian Wars. So he created this village that he used for a film set at the time in the 70s, but now it's community run by local communities in the area. They do sort of traditional events that try and keep the heritage of that area alive, but there's also a hotel there. That's why we stay there. And it's got a magnificent setting in the mountains, and how we get there is by a narrow gauge rail train. So it's a really cool way to arrive, particularly as this is a train tour. It's the Shargan 8 railway in Serbia, and we take that railway through the mountains through a series of hairpin bends, and arrive at this wonderful destination. So that's a little flavour of what we have going on with our rail trips. We're visiting some of the major sites and cities that you'll see en route: Bordeaux, San Sebastian, Pisa, Athens, Kiev, Berlin, but also going to some more unusual places and getting you a little bit off the beaten track as well. So if I can pass back to Anthony.
That's great. Thanks very much, Carmel. I have to say those rail trips do look fantastic. I'm a bit of a train geek. I love traveling by train, and I'm super excited about these. I'd love to do all of them. Next slide, please, Ben. So what I'm going to do now is just give you a bit of a insight, I guess, into some of the potential travel trends over the next 18 months. So If, like me, you spent the last 2 summers holidaying in the UK, and there's nothing wrong with the UK, I have to say, we've had seen some fantastic places over the last 18 months. I think the next 2 years, there's going to be an awful lot of yearning to go and explore again and go further afield. I think the trends point to people traveling for longer and really making it count, being more immersive. So it's all about, rather than just going from place to place, really getting under the skin of the destination. And I think actually, just going back to the point that Carmel made on the rail journeys when she talked about the London to Istanbul, yeah, sure, you can do that in 4 days, but actually taking your time and really, stopping along the way and really seeing the highlights as and taking the time to do that, you're going to get so much richer experience. So I've put together 2 slides here. First slide looks at where we think European destinations are really going to take off next year. And some of these are trips which have performed really well for us before the pandemic. Others we think are likely to see a lot of growth because of the fact that they're easy to travel to, they're very accessible, and they offer great value for money. The first one I'm just going to talk about is Chernobyl. And of course, we've got a rail trip to Chernobyl, and this has surprisingly been one of our really good sellers in the last 3 to 5 years. I don't know if any of you saw the really good drama, the 3-part television drama that was set in Chernobyl. I mean, it's known for the obviously for the disaster that took place way back in 1986. But it's become an incredibly popular destination in its own right. And I think one of the reasons for that is because it's one of the few places where nature has completely reclaimed vast tracts of forest and also entire towns as well. So we offer it as a 5-day short trip, but we also offer it as part of a longer trip, which we spend more time in Kiev and more time exploring Ukraine as a whole. So really popular. The feedback from this trip has been absolutely fantastic. We've got dedicated dates where you can actually go into the go inside the nuclear power station, which, I mean, it's completely safe nowadays. It's we follow stringent protocols in terms of making sure that we don't spend too long in any of the sites. Fascinating experience and a real sort of hands-on experience, and one which I think will be popular as we go into 2022. I also want to talk about Turkey. Turkey's always been popular for Explore. It's a very accessible trip, lots of low-cost flight options to get to Turkey, whether you're trekking, whether you're cycling, whether it's a multi-active holiday, excuse me, or a cultural holiday. Really, Turkey has it all. It's also got some, I love my Turkish food, so it's always an absolute delight to go there. We've got a trip there where you can go, highlights trip in winter for some winter sun. It's also a very popular destination all year round. So we see Turkey as being a really popular destination as we go into next year. So excuse me, if we can go on to the next slide, please, Ben. So as we look to options long haul, well, we really are spoiled for choice here. I think reflecting back on the walking theme, some of the classic treks, so Kilimanjaro or the Inca Trail, both of these I think we see as being really popular and getting very strong demand for people traveling next year and into 2023. People wanting a challenge, so whether it's Kilimanjaro, the Inca Trail, or Mount Tupkal, or also trekking in the Annapurnas, we've got a full range of trips. These are challenging, but not overly challenging. So the Inca Trail typically is at 4,000 meters. It's a 4-day trail to get from Ollantaytambo through to the famous citadel at Machu Picchu, and it's one of the great classic treks, and it really doesn't disappoint. The views along the way of the Andean mountains are simply spectacular. And of course, at the end, when you first set put your eyes spot the Machu Picchu site. It really is a site which will stay with you forever. Is Georgia. Now, not many people. This one is definitely off the tourist trail, but Georgia really took off 2 years ago. It's the Caucasus Mountains are absolutely stunning, as you can see from this photograph here. So Georgia, known for its great walking, but also known for its hospitality. We do a 10-day trip here. Some great local living experiences. The food in Georgia is definitely, for me, one of the highlights. You go and have a village lunch, which consists of about 7 courses, and they just keep bringing more and more and more plates of the most spectacular food imaginable. The cheesy bread for me is one of my favorites. But for those who love food, love scenery, want to get off the beaten track, I would say Georgia is a must-see for the year ahead.
So Anthony covered some of our bucket list trips just there, which have been very popular for Explore, and we believe that they are going to be even more so next year, because people have just left their bucket list on hold. I've always meant to go to Peru. I've always wanted to trek the Inca Trail. We haven't been able to go anywhere for nearly 2 years, and people are starting to think, all right, it's really time that I did that now. But along with those destinations, we have been working really hard over the last year to launch new trips. And something we have excelled at in the past is developing trips in quite unusual and challenging destinations. And you're really going to see some of those in the next section, beginning with our first trip in Pakistan. If we can move on to the next slide. So we Explore have previous form in Pakistan. We used to run this tour, not this particular tour, sorry, but a trip in Pakistan up until 9/11. And basically for us, as for much of the rest of the tourism industry, Pakistan has pretty much been a difficult place to administer or to consider traveling to as a tourist. However, our head of our product team here, he used to tour lead there. He's a bit of a Central Asia and Pakistan and India expert. And he recently told me that if there was one place that he would like to go back to, and one place that he'd actually like to take his wife to, in that kind of way that you've been to somewhere so much and you really just want to introduce it to other people and show it to them through your eyes. If there was one place that he could take her to, it would be Pakistan. That is how excited he is about us operating there again and taking people back there. So, I mean, what's there? What's so exciting about it? Well, our trip is all about the journey. It's all about big scenery, mountains, glaciers. You've got 3 mountain ranges. So you've got the Karakoram range, the Himalaya, and the Hindu Kush, all converging in one area. That contains many of the world's 8,000 plus meter peaks. So as well as the mountains and glaciers, you've got almost sort of Swiss-esque valleys of pine trees and wildflower meadows. And as well as this scenery, you also get a real blend of religions and cultures. Pakistan has 4 predominant ethnic groups, and they all sort of come together in the country with different languages, different traditions. So as you're moving through and touring, traveling around the country, you'll get different food, you'll get different heritages, different languages spoken in the places that you go to. So it's the Karakoram Highway itself is one of the highest roads in the world. We will fly into a place called Skardu from Islamabad, which is in this big mountainous area. You may even see K2 from the plane if it's a clear day. And then we drive to the highest border crossing in the world, the Kunjarab Pass, and we see it from the Pakistan side. It's the border with China, and drive the Karakoram Highway all the way down to Islamabad. And part of the route traverses the ancient Silk Road. So you've got so much heritage and history there as well. And just one thing that I really wanted to bring out of this trip is that bottom right picture. So we stay for 2 nights in what we term simple huts, and Explore grade all of our accommodation on our website. So we have simple, comfortable and premium. And these simple huts are really, they're really not so simple. I mean, so the setting of them, you can see, is pretty fantastic. They also have ensuite facilities and hot showers. So to say that you have that in this kind of remote location is amazing. And one of the best things about this place is that it's only accessible on foot. So quite unusually for Explore. It is actually an 8-kilometer hike to get to, a walk. It's not a tough hike. It's a walk to get to these fairy meadows, which just makes it, the remoteness just makes it even more spectacular, really. But it is probably a good point to note that there's a little bit more walking in this trip than we normally get on our cultural tours. So this trip isn't a walking trip per se, it is a cultural trip, because there's so much traveling and experiencing different cultural nuances of Pakistan. But we do have a little bit more walking on the trip. So we do an easy walk on a glacier, for example, as well as this trip to Fairy Meadows. So, I mean, in sum, to sum Pakistan up, really, for us, it's sort of a trip back in time to what we really excel at, which is exploratory trips in quite unusual, quite challenging destinations. But we put them together with local expertise and make sure that we've got local tour leaders and guides on the ground that are going to be with you the whole time. So if we move to the next slide, we'll see another quite challenging and unusual destination. And this has been a real labour of love for me over the last year, as I recently launched our new trip to Saudi Arabia. And just a bit of Saudi Arabian general history. Prior to 2019, you couldn't really get a leisure visa. So visas were restricted to pilgrims for Mecca or Umrah, the other pilgrimage there, business travellers and expat workers. But the government now wants to reduce their reliance on oil money, so they've opened up to tourism. And that's been really the first time that they've done that in 20 years. And the country is not all desert. That's probably the most important thing that I want to say about Saudi. It's got mountains of over 3,000 meters. So that's, yeah, the highest point in the country is over 3,000 meters. There's lush green areas, there's wadis, there's massive craters, which we will see and do a little walk around. You get the Red Sea coast, great food, and we'll also go to the Middle East's largest camel market, which is a massive affair of, you know, shouting, bartering, smells, and souks. Sort of, they have food trucks there. It's really wonderful. That top left picture there on the screen is an ancient city built by the same people who made Petra in Jordan, and it's their second city, and it's right in the middle of the desert. It's fantastic. We've just gone to the next slide. I'm like Anthony, I'm quite conscious of time, and I will not go into this in too much detail, but there may be some questions, so please feel free to ask me about, you know, what do you wear in Saudi Arabia, etc. We've had a lot of questions on that note. But yeah, it is, for example, a dry state. Shops may close briefly up to 5 times a day to observe prayer, because prayer time is quite very well respected in Saudi Arabia. With the opening up of Saudi to foreign tourists, the sort of legal system has become relaxed and slightly more modernized. Women can drive, travel solo throughout the country. There's a women's club in Jeddah, and the country also has a film industry now. I mean, cinema was banned there since the 80s. So there is a with leisure travel now, there is an opening and an up to let's say a bit more westernization, for good and bad. And I've heard nothing but positive things about the people who live in Saudi, the local Saudi Arabians, and the way that travelers are treated with great respect and a lot of interest, but generally great respect. So next slide, please. 2 more trips to talk to you about. One of them is our Walking Oman trip, which is another new tour, obviously. And really it's a trip of 2 halves. So you've got the desert side in Wahiba Sands, which is like the total Arabian desert experience, wild camping in the desert. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you've just got an absolute sea of stars above you. One of my colleagues used to tour lead in this area, and he said when they camped in the desert, you'd go to sleep, there'd be nothing there, literally nothing around you, and then you'd wake up and there's little animal tracks that you can follow through the desert and try and work out what's been around you in the night. Mainly things like dung beetle, things like that. But that's a great real desert experience. But they've also got mountains there of over 3,000 meters as well. So half of the trip is in the desert, half of the trip is in the Hajar range, which goes up to 3,004 meters is the highest peak there. And we will hike up the highest peak. So it's really sort of totally 2-sided trip and totally remote areas. And right in the middle of the tour, you've been in the mountains for ages, you haven't seen anyone. You go into the desert, you're not going to see anyone. In the middle of the tour, you go to this place called Nizwa, which is the old Omani capital, and you'll see a real slice of Omani life there. They have a goat market weekly, which we've timed our trip to join. And this goat market's been running for centuries. So you really get to see a rural Omani life in the middle of this trip where you kind of haven't seen anyone. It will be quite an interesting culture shock there. Next slide, please, Ben. And the last trip I want to mention is our Winter in Turkey trip. We run a lot of tours in Turkey. It's been very popular for us, from walking, family, and general touring cultural sites and things. But we haven't done anything in winter. Typically, our trips run from April to roughly October, maybe early November. But Turkey is actually a fantastic winter destination because it has 2 really temperate coasts. So you've got the Aegean and the Mediterranean. So you can go swimming. So when we hit the coast there down in Kaş and near Dalyan, you can go swimming. And then a few days later, you'll be up in the mountains. And there are some ancient sites in the mountains. There's an Ottoman site and a sort of Greco-Roman old site that feasibly in January and February may have snow. So you get the real contrast of the sea, which is very much swimmable at that time of year, but then in the mountains, snow. And some just really stunning sites, including Ephesus, for example, which is one of the most famous in Turkey, and Hierapolis. But winter's a brilliant time to go. It's not busy. It's not full of crowds. Someone has just asked, is it a cultural tour or is there some walking as well? It's a cultural tour, this one. There are 2 small, short walks on it, but they're easy walks. So it's not a walking trip as such. We do have walking trips in Turkey, and I think the earliest walking trip is in April if you wanted to go out of season, so you're not going to see the crowds. If you did want a walking trip, then yeah, April or October would also be a good time to go on the Lycian Way, for example. And having said that, so as I said, there's couple of small walks. One of them is we do offer a day walk on the Lycian Way on this trip, so along the coast from Kaş, and that's where you can swim. Actually, you walk the Lyceum Way to a bay, swim, go back to Kaş, have some great Turkish food in the evening and a few beers, and it's all good. So yeah, this one's been quite popular for us, and this winter is the first time that we're going to be running it, with I think the first departure like next week or the week after, I believe. So that is it from me and Anthony, and if you have any questions, now is the time.
I've got over my coughing fit, so we've had a few questions there, so I've hopefully responded to some of them.
Okay, well, fantastic. We'll keep those questions coming in, guys. I just want to say, a big thank you to Carmel and Anthony, of course. That's been a whistle-stop insight into Explore and a wonderful range of trips. We're really seeing the travel is back, and it's looking far more positive for travel, certainly for 2022. Pleasingly, bookings over the last kind of 4 or 6 weeks are back up to nearly those 2019 levels, which I think really shows that there is that kind of confidence coming back into the market for travel finally. So whether it's, it's a wildlife tour of Costa Rica, whether it's that walking trip that Anthony talked walking across the Amalfi Coast, whether it's cycling in Croatia or visiting the Golden Triangle in India, we would love to welcome you on a trip with us in the near future.